Hello and welcome to this new trip report here on the channel Travel Plus Loyalty, the YouTube channel of Inside Flyer. I've just arrived at Copenhagen's Airport Terminal 3 by train and now need to find my boarding pass for today's flight. Need to head through security and find myself a lounge where I can get some breakfast. And of course we also need to talk about today's flight, but all that in good time. Maybe let me put a face to the voice you've been hearing so far. So today is of course a very special day because we will be traveling with Scandinavian Airlines from Copenhagen Airport to Toronto. Now this is the first flight that Scandinavian Airlines is doing on this route, and of course they're doing it with a very special aircraft, with their brand new A321LR. So there are a lot of firsts on this trip and I'm very excited to see what Scandinavian Airlines has to offer on that route, and especially how they're doing with the A321LR. Alright, but first things first, the Scandinavian Airlines Business Lounge combines contemporary Scandinavian design with the usual offerings a lounge just has to have. And after I've indulged myself with a little bit of breakfast, it was time to head over to our gate. As mentioned, we are today on the inaugural flight, so the very first time Scandinavian Airlines connects Copenhagen Airport with Toronto in Canada. And because of that, of course, there are some celebrations, a little bit of cake, some flags and speeches.
You have no idea what this means for SAS. This is really a day to celebrate. So thank you for being here. Our inaugural flight to Toronto. Fantastic news.
Today is a day of joy. As you say, Anko, it's a fantastic day for us. It's the first new launch of a route we have had for 3 years. This industry has been going through the worst crisis we have ever seen.
But luckily it looks like the worst days are behind us, and I'm very excited now to try out this brand new aircraft.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Another 1, 2. Yeah.
So we are on board with face mask, a little reminder that Corona still exists. First impressions, it looks quite nice. I mean, this is basically the business class you could expect from Scandinavian Airlines on their wide bodies, at least on the Airbus A350s. I know that they have modified parts of the cabin so that it actually fits on board the A321, but as I say, first impression is actually quite nice. So let's see how the crew and the aircraft will hold up on our way to Toronto. And of course, if you like this type of content and would like to see more of it here on the channel Travel Plus Loyalty, then be sure to hit that like button and of course subscribe for more. The seating on board in the business class cabin is arranged in a 2+2 and 1+1 configuration, which is quite nice for the single traveler as it gives you a little bit more privacy. The seat itself is, in my opinion, a little bit to the narrower side,
but otherwise quite alright. There's definitely sufficient storage space, there are various power plugs that should facilitate the needs of most travelers, and there are touch buttons which control your seat, so you can configure it from an upright position all the way to a full flat position. It does also include a massage function, but more on that a little bit later. Blankets and pillows and an amenity kit are of course also provided. The usual pre-start service of course offers you some champagne or non-alcoholic drinks if you prefer that. So I'm putting my feet up and starting to relax. And of course, if you should need any more to drink, there's of course a bottle of water provided as well. So while I was enjoying my champagne and started to, well, discover the different features the seat had to offer, I found this little, well, controller, which is of course practical for the games that the in-flight entertainment system offers, but I think I found a potential design flaw, because on the other side here you have the call button, and I can just imagine small children's hands pushing these call buttons by accident all the time. Anyways, I'm sure you're already questioning why I have time to talk about all that before we have even got going.
So it is of course not unusual for a brand new aircraft to have small technical issues, small hiccups that haven't been quite sorted out yet, and it appears our aircraft today does also have a minor technical issue, at least that's what we've been told so far. Our scheduled departure time was recorded at 12 o'clock, and we are now 20 minutes past that, and still no news how it is going with the issue. But I'm still confident that we of course will be leaving today, and hopefully soon.
Well, it ended up taking another 40 minutes, so with an hour delay we were finally ready to go, and off we went for Toronto. So after takeoff I enjoyed a hot towel and then started to go a little bit on a discovery around the IFE, and other than having a very glossy screen which made it difficult to hide the cameraman, well, let me say that the entertainment system on board is a little bit of a letdown. Yes, movies, there are about 60 of them, should be sufficient for most travelers. However, the rest is, well, not that really substantial. For example, if we take a look at the TV section, well, what you see here is, on the first glimpse, well, 87 different TV shows. That sounds like a lot, but when you then go into these shows, you will see that most of them have a single episode. So for the generation of binge watchers, this is definitely not the right IFE. And I hate to say it, but the music section was practically empty. But there are of course also other ways to entertain yourself on board the aircraft, as the aircraft features Wi-Fi. And for Eurobonus Diamond, Gold and SAS Business and SAS Plus passengers, the Wi-Fi is for free. However, I would also say that it is definitely not worth spending any money on, as the internet is, let's say it, quite wonky. Large sections of the flight there was no connection at all, and for the rest of the time the internet was very slow. So for reading, well, the latest article on Inside Flyer, yes, it's alright, but watching YouTube or Instagram, that's a pain. Oh yeah, and then there was the whole thing about wearing masks. Now, we were explained during boarding that we would have to wear face masks for the entire duration of the flight, but as soon as passengers entered the cabin, quite a few dropped their masks and were not asked to put them back on by the crew. Even more confusing, some of the crew had the masks on and some of them did not. After the takeoff, the crew, however, did solve this a little bit confusing situation and explained that the rule about wearing masks on board the aircraft had been dropped for aircraft flying to Canada. Canada as long as they were not registered in Canada. Welcome to traveling in 2022, I guess. And with all that practical stuff out of the way, it was time to start the onboard service. The first round consisted of warm roasted nuts. Of course, I had to have a gin and tonic, and here Scandinavian Airlines offers the really brilliant hallo gin from Sweden. And of course, I did definitely not struggle to eat that nut. For the starter, I went with the ham, which definitely tasted well, but the star here was the bread, which was quite frankly excellent. All that was accompanied with a glass of Pinot Noir. The main dish was then South American inspired grilled welfare chicken breast with some salsa on top. And while I like my spicy food, unfortunately in this case the salsa simply overpowered any other flavor the dish might have had. Even worse, it was very, very watery. Now, I can see that this might be beneficial for the chicken so it doesn't dry out, but this was a little bit much in my opinion. After a little wait, the dessert was served, which consisted of strawberries and a tart with elderflower crumble. And that is the face of a man who's just eaten the best strawberry of his life. And well, what can I say? Of course, the fat kid also needs to round it all off with a nice ice cream. Now, after all that food, it was time for me to rest a bit, but it did also give me time to think a little bit, because it is somewhat different to fly intercontinental in a single-aisle aircraft. For me, it is in fact the first time, but I wonder how it is for the pilots. Good thing is, we can just ask them.
Yeah, it's different. We have some long flights within Europe as well. The difference is, of course, that the flight is longer. Also, we have some different rules that we need to obey to fly these long-haul flights, and they mainly have to do with flying over water, basically. And those rules are the same that we have for the Airbus 330 and the Airbus 350. So there is no difference to that. And that we have done for a very long time in SAS. So we have very good experience from that. Here in the cockpit, it's basically the same. It's we have a couple of extra systems. We have, of course, a little bit more fuel on board.
We fly a little bit slower, maybe a little bit lower, depending on the load. So it's actually more or less the same. It's just 10 minutes longer a day for us, so that's no biggie.
But just as much fun.
Oh yes, sure is. And we're looking forward to hopefully having many more 321 NX or long range, so we can maybe fly to some new exciting destinations.
Now, back in the cabin, I must admit that there's one thing that has been bugging me quite a while. And that's actually the choice of using the A321LR on a route to Toronto. In my books, this aircraft is predestined to be operated from secondary markets, but Scandinavian Airlines has chosen to operate the aircraft out of its main hubs, Copenhagen and Stockholm. Luckily, I found someone who I could ask about just that.
Yeah, well, basically you should work for a network department, because you have now identified exactly the two reasons how we're going to use this, or the two ways that we're going to use this aircraft. The first one is secondary markets, right? Let's try and figure out what kind of secondary markets don't have a direct service yet to, for instance, the United States, and there we can try things. But from our hubs, from the main operations, right, Stockholm, Oslo and Copenhagen, you can actually try things that are not connected yet, right? So we don't have direct flights to Canada. Okay, great. Now we can do it with a wide body. The capital exposure, in a way, right, the financial risk, if you like, of trying that with a wide body is of course far greater. So we're doing that now with the 321LR. So it serves both of those needs or requirements. We can try things from our hubs, and we can certainly also test things from our secondary markets, and you'll see some of that as well.
If you would like to see the full interview I did with Anko van der Werff, the CEO of Scandinavian Airlines, then that video you can find right here on the channel, Travel Plus Loyalty, but we will also leave a link to that in the description below. But after all that action, I definitely needed a little bit of a nap. Or so I thought.
So guys, coming to you in a slightly different position than normally. I'm trying out the full flat option of the seat, and it's not too bad. I mean, yes, I've had softer beds than this, but it's okay. Now, as a reference, I think the airline claims that passengers to 193 centimeters will fit into this bed or seat or whatever you want to call it. I'm 182 centimeters long and I just fit in, which is alright, of course, but anyone taller might struggle a little bit. But my biggest issue with the seat is not so much that it has a full flat option, that's nice, or the seat itself is also quite comfortable. But my biggest problem with this seat is that I have now several times managed to activate the massage option of the seat. Now that can be quite enjoyous, but I do prefer to have it on my choosing, on my own choosing. The buttons here are touch buttons, which means you have no feel. And for some reason I managed to constantly activate the massage option. In fact, right now in this laying down position that I am in, the massage option has switched on again, which is a bit uncomfortable, to be honest. But now I've managed to get into this position and I can't be bothered to get up again, and at least not straight away. So yeah, we're just going with that. So yeah, the struggles of business class travel, I guess.
But luckily, despite those challenges, I still managed to get a full hour's sleep. And then it was already time for the pre-landing meal. And here SAS served rye bread with eggs and prawns, a Scandinavian classic, and while that probably would have gone better with some schnapps and beer, my batteries needed recharging, so I went for a Coke. And other than my complete inability to open this little box of chocolate, I can tell you that the chocolates inside actually tasted pretty alright. But then again, how can you go wrong with chocolate? And with that, we were getting closer to Toronto, and despite our initial 1 hour delayed departure, we managed to land perfectly on time and got this spectacular view of the Toronto skyline.
Alright, let's see what Toronto Airport has to offer.
And apart from the much needed walk to get the system going again, the walk through the terminal did also give me the time to reflect a little bit on today's flight.
So, there's certainly a lot of speculation around the airline at the moment, and Scandinavian Airlines is struggling in many ways. And a lot of loyal customers are taking their business elsewhere. But on this occasion, on this flight, on this day, with this crew and on this aircraft, they did well. And I think that should be recognized. It might just be a tiny little step, but it is a little step in the right direction. So let's see what is on the horizon for Scandinavian Airlines.
Now, if you have enjoyed this type of video here on the channel, then feel free to leave a like, that would be very much appreciated. And of course, if you are new around here, you're always welcome to hit subscribe. I've been Christoph from Bongo Planes, and on behalf of Travel Plus Loyalty and Inside Flyer, thank you for having watched our video.
Bringing out the fight, yeah, bring on all the lightning, 'cause I